Welcome to the channel. I'm Mark. What story are you wanting to hear after that intro? Is it enough to see only the side of a snake? One of my last photo outings was less than stellar. Unlike the snake, which is almost always in a state of flow, I found I was striving to take good photographs. And as a result, most of the pictures that I came home with were crap. In the process, my internal self talk took a negative turn. It became judging and criticizing of practically every shot that I took. Maybe some of it was from becoming cocky and overconfident as a photographer. Maybe some of the chatter was even from a lack of opening to mindful awareness. Along the trail, I'd seen this yellow-breasted chat land in a bush that was full of red berries. And I know that the yellow-breasted chat loves to eat these berries. Each and every photograph attempting to get a picture of the yellow-breasted chat resulted in either the bird being blurry or out of focus. Rather than slow down and ground and regain focus to stay present in those moments, my thoughts began ramping up and criticizing and judging every shot. Judging the pictures as being bad. Also, even judging the camera and the lens. And this is a camera lens that tends to be my go-to. I found it to be a power horse combination. It's the Canon EOS R6 with the RF 100 to 500 millimeter lens. Great for the type of photography I do, primarily nature photography. So in this particular time, for some reason, my interaction with the camera and the lens was not where I'm used to it being. The fact that I'm comfortable with the camera and the lens did not stop the negative chatter. I came across this particular dragonfly hovering and darting about in this particular area. It was a large dragonfly, one that I'm not familiar seeing around. While taking photographs of this dragonfly, the inner judge and the inner critic became exceptionally active. I've previously have set the intention of capturing images of dragonflies in flight, freezing the wings in motion, freezing the body in motion. So once again, I made a choice to attempt to try to have the camera do all the work, to do the heavy lifting. I placed the camera into electronic shutter mode, a mode that I'm not typically shooting in. In essence, used a technique that kind of learned in my previous career, one that's rarely effective. This technique is informally referred to as pray and spray. Just start shooting and see what happens. And maybe out of 100 images, I might get one or two that are quality. Not the best photographic process. So I set the camera at 1/3000th of a second. I even experimented with going to 1/6000th of a second, letting the camera do what it does on adjusting ISO. And the camera seemed to be tracking the dragonfly on the autofocus. And I found that I was struggling to get good images of the dragonfly. And certainly when I got back to the studio, I found that to be true also. So judging and criticizing was loud and strong. It was criticizing the camera. They were criticizing the lens. They're criticizing the dragonfly even. And eventually the criticisms turned inward toward myself. Stories and narratives similar to, come on, you know better than this, etc. In that walk back to the car, I definitely became having an awareness that the judge and the critic aren't the same. And my practices, my mindful awareness practices, were useful for me to identifying and teasing out the differences and even the presence of them. Maybe not while they were happening. There might be some work to do there still. Maybe that's the judge and the critic present right there. But certainly after the fact. On this outing, that order happened to be that the judge showed up first, and then along came the critic. The critic's almost always late to the party. So I wonder how many of you watching this criticize and judge your own photos and pictures that you take, and maybe even your abilities, possibly even more harshly than others might judge or criticize. Is your inner judge and critic useful sometimes? So if so, I invite you to share in the comments down below. Maybe you're wondering what I did with my newfound awareness of my inner judge and inner critic as I was walking back to the car. I welcome them with a mindful awareness and engage with what I like to call the big five practices. I found that these practices are useful in short form, but also in deeper, more contemplative approaches. They are gratitude, acceptance, compassion, meaning, and forgiveness. Forgiveness being the one that, for me, has been very useful throughout my life, of when I have made mistakes, when I have messed up, when I have been less than perfect, being able to learn from it and move on without a lot of regret and resentments. Or even being able to forgive maybe the camera and the lens, or forgiving the dragonfly, for instance, for not being a perfect dragonfly, of holding still and hovering the way I want it to so I could take a picture of it. All of that comes together. And so these practices allow for those learning lessons, but also for moving forward without too much harsh inner criticism and judgment. Keep watching to see more images of the snake, but also to view some photos where my judge and critic weren't nearly as active as they were in this last shoot. May we all continue to open our hearts and our minds to work courageously and ceaselessly for the benefit of all beings. Be well.